The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Welcome to the Brandon Peters Show for our final entry into the inaugural World Film Project series on the show. Today we'll be discussing 2014's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. And with me, as always, for this is Sharareh Drury of Hollywood Reporter, previously from E! News and Culture S, making her fifth appearance on the show. 5'5", staying alive. Hello, Sharareh.
Fifth appearance? That's insane.
Five.
What am I doing?
That's the one. That's the everybody else down here.
I'm a queen of this game. I mean, I am like, what am I, like, dark goddess
of the underworld.
Underworld. So obviously, I gotta represent for my underworld homies.
Which if people want to know, like, early on, I was like, what do you like? I always go over with people their introduction. Like, is that okay? Like, is there anything you want? And you said, as long as you had Dark Goddess of the Underworld on there, and I have called you that ever since. It was a request.
I mean, it is a request. It's a humble request, but I'm glad that we have partaken in it each time. It is my title, so like we gotta like respect it. So.
It was your specific colors of M&M requests. So.
Exactly, 100%.
So how have you felt now after these 3 films we've gone through? Good? Liking?
I mean, I feel good. I mean, I feel like in general, what makes me happy about this is even if like a few people listen, it's the whole point of this, I feel like, is to expand horizons for people's cinematic viewing and get them to try new things. I also am trying new things in real time doing it.
Right.
So like I think like Girl with the Red Scarf, that was super intense, passionate, dramatic, romantic. Flip to Remote Control, the absolute wackiest. I honestly think Remote Control from Iceland, wackiest film I've ever seen in my life. I don't know what I can, like, I think we were talking about, I would compare it to like a Superbad, but like even crazier.
Yeah, very crazy.
I just really enjoyed that film. And to bring in this one that we're going to talk about today, I'm very excited because it's one of my favorite movies ever.
Yes. Also, I want to point out, if there is a country or a film that fits the World Film Project parameters that we set up, which you're going to find out are a little looser than said before in a sec, let us know. And more importantly, know where we can find it and have access. Because a lot of these films, I took forever getting this off the ground, because Sharareh and I talked about it back in like February. And like part of what took so long to do that was looking up ones, trying to make it work well, and then trying to find out how I can watch it. And I believe...
And if there are subtitles that work.
If there's subtitles that work.
Those things.
And I believe The Girl with the Red Scarf almost didn't find it. Like, I was moving on to something else, and then I don't know what a different place I was reading about films from Turkey had a link, and it went to, I don't know how I would have looked this up on the Tube of Views and found it, but it was there. So, and plus there's a bunch of remake stuff for it, so it's hard to find. So yeah, let us know, and let us know where we can find it. We always prefer to watch things legally here on the Brandon Peters Show, but I always put an insistence on, if access is not available or not being provided from a distributor or something, then I have no problem with watching a stream that doesn't have rights. Like a lot of movies that are on VHS never come to DVD. That VHS I'm not spending hundreds of dollars on eBay for if someone has put it somewhere, because access isn't being allowed by people who could give access for me to pay a decent amount.
Right.
That's where I draw my line a bit. That's where I would draw
Right.
my line a bit. So today, girl walks home alone at night.
من کارهای بدی کردم.
اون چیزایی که پدر تو دوست داری بودجه‌شو نداره.
پسر خوبی. دروغ نگو. تو پسر خوب هستی.
چراغو خاموش کن.
نصف شبی کجا بودی؟
دختر در تاریکی کن دقت.
منو نمیدونی.
چرا دنبال منی؟
چیزی که میبینی
دزدی؟
نه.
پس چی هستی؟
من بدم.
میخوام واسم برقصی.
اگه الان یه دونه طوفان میامد، یه دونه طوفان خیلی شدید از پشت اون کوه ها، چیزی عوض میشه؟
Written and directed by Anna Lily Armapour. This is her feature film directorial debut for a feature film. She's done some shorts, starring Sheila Vand, Arash Marandi, Marshall Manesh, Motan Marno, Dominic Rains, and Rome Shadanlu. Shadanlu.
I'll help you with the Persian names. It's all
Did
good.
I do the rest of them okay?
I think you did, honestly. Especially, so the guy who plays Arash in the movie, Arash Marandi, like, I have a cousin named that. And biggest thing he got as a kid growing up in the States was, because it looks like a rash. Got totally.
I didn't even think of that. Okay.
No, but that's good. That's good you did not. Kids growing up did. So I'm always like, that can always be like one of the tough ones. And it's a very common Iranian name. But no, you said the names. Got it.
Gotcha.
You know, we've had a lot of complicated names on the show that are, because like we're both, I mean, I'm Iranian, but I was born in the US. So like, I'm going to have my own like hindrances, I guess, with saying some names from different countries. So it's difficult. So I empathize, and I have a tough name to say myself. So I get it.
Gotcha. The film is about in the Iranian ghost town Bad City, a place that reeks of death and loneliness. The townspeople are unaware that they're being stalked by a vampire. Now, I mentioned earlier we're cheating a bit here with the rules. So, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night was shot in Taft, California, by the UK-born director of Iranian descent, but she's never lived there. It's an all-Iranian cast. Dialogue entirely in Farsi, strongly Persian, meant to be there and sold as the first Iranian vampire Western. So here's my shtick. This, to me, is no different than something like one of my favorite horror films is Lucio Fulci's The Beyond. It's an Italian horror film. You wouldn't put it to any other country. Ditto on City of the Living Dead, the one that precedes it, shot in New Orleans. Star Wars was shot in Tunisia, and the studio work done in the United Kingdom. But you would say that is a film from the United States, correct?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
The benefit of A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night being shot in the United States, it allows some more honest things to be present that wouldn't be allowed to fly in the country.
Oh my gosh, that's very,
there's
very accurate.
There's an out-and-out gay kind of trans character-ish. We don't really get a lot of focus. It's a sort of a decorative
rockabilly,
character.
yeah. Like they're gender bending, basically.
Right.
So like, yeah. So which would not be something you would ever see, like in Iran, like a film made in Iran.
Yes.
Would not allow that.
It's been referred to as a fusion of Iranian and American cultural cinema. And if anything, for those of you coming into this episode having not seen the film before, perhaps, and I'm hoping for it to be a gateway into an appreciation of the culture and a doorway into seeking out their cinematic landscape.
Well said, Brandon. I love that.
That's my thing.
I absolutely agree. That's
so,
very well said.
To me, it was meant with the intention of being a film there. It's not some American experiment. I will count it for that, and I will promise to do a true 100% Iranian film in the future. But
awesome. And I have recs for those, obviously.
Heck
but
yeah.
I'm glad that this is it, because I do think, as we'll get into it, I think what makes this film so special in a lot of ways is, one, like you said, like it's an Iranian cast. It's in Farsi. It's meant to be like in Bad City in Iran. Like all of that, I think, is important, because it's very rare to see something like that made here in the US and also become so popular. And also, like you said, I don't think obviously much of this film, if at all, could have been done in Iran. So in a lot of ways, it is what it is, because it was made somewhere where all of those allowances could happen. So it is Iranian at the end of the day. It's just like where it was, like we've been talking about these other films, maybe where they're specifically made and produced, all of that stuff, important to a degree. But at the end of the day, like, what is this introducing you to? It is introducing you to the Iranian language, Iranian people, Iranian culture. So I think that fits the bill.
And the thing I like about the production a lot is it doesn't settle because it's in America. There are a lot of American productions doing similar things or could try with like, well, it's not Iranian, but yeah, close enough. They don't settle for that. They 100% they're doing it. And that's where I was like, okay with this. And I thought about like a lot of my other favorite international films that shoot here and they are from their other countries, just because other countries can go on location. Granted, this is an American production shooting here, but I feel the same intent. I feel it's meant to be of that. So I think it can count.
Absolutely.
Plus, people should see this movie because it rocks.
Absolutely.
So yeah, this is the one that both of us have seen, and I think seen multiple times before this.
Absolutely. I've seen this film. It's hard because I don't remember the first time I initially watched it. It's been a long time. Because it came out in 2014. I think, 2014. So I have, in that time frame, I've seen it a lot. It's probably, if you follow me on Twitter, it every single time anyone's like, I want a movie to watch. Give me your rec. This is always my rec. Always my rec. Way more than I know on a previous recording. We've talked about another film that I really love, Persepolis.
Yep.
I love that film as well, but I think I would rec this one always the most, just because it, as we'll get into, like, there's so many elements that I enjoy. First off, I love vampires. Second off, I love anything kind of like spooky and weird. I love that it has like a lot of like feminist undertone. I mean, like, what I say feminist undertones, but I think it is like in a lot of ways a really good feminist film. I also just love the characters, and I love a vampire who skateboards. Like, what is not to love? Like, it's right. There's so many interesting elements to this film. And so I always recommend it, but I've seen it probably too many times to count. And I didn't need to worry about where it was, because I remember I was trying to remember, like, have I bought this? I have bought it on like a couple places. So I had it. Like, I have like physical copy. I have it like on streaming. So I was like, okay, I'm set to rewatch this to my heart's content. But yeah.
I first saw, so this came out in 2014. I believe, I wanted to see it in the theater, and when it was playing it here in Indianapolis, there was this, I think it was the summer my daughter was born, and when you have child and it's recent and stuff, you kind of just don't, I didn't want to leave my wife to be like, I'm just going to the movies, and plus you're tired, like, I just want to leave the house.
Right.
I don't, and like, I think I didn't get in the window it was showing at my art house theater, and but I blind bought it when it came to Blu-ray, and I really took to it. I was like, okay, this, because I saw the trailer, I saw like screenshot. I'm like, this just looks incredible, and I really really liked it. And I didn't know until I watched the bonus features that it was shot in America back then and stuff. And I had forgotten that fact too before this. But like, the thing is, like, I saw things where people had shot in Taft, California, and looks like Taft, California. I'm like, if you've been to Taft, California, because I would not.
Wouldn't know where that is. I'm sorry for people.
I could show this to 100 people, and I bet 98 of them don't realize it's, and that's being kind. Don't think they think it's probably somewhere in Iran. Like,
I mean, having been there, having visited there so many times, and I know about, I mean, it could be. Like, I also think, granted, a lot of the scenes that are happening are very intimate scenes. Like, I mean, yeah, like, it's not like there are a couple times where there's landscapes and background stuff that we're seeing, or like, outside of buildings. But for the most part, yeah, like, I mean, technically it could be anywhere. It's Bad City. Like,
Bad City, yeah.
It's Bad City. Like, it could be anywhere. So, but yeah, like, before I knew that, I assumed it was in Iran, and I'm Iranian. So that was me. So sorry to Taft. I'm sorry. It could be anywhere.
Yeah. I just took it as, and you'll be so swept up the magic of cinema that you will never question where it's been shot and taken place. It's that good. That's how talented Anna Lily is. And I will say one off note with my, I don't know how it is where you own it, but my Blu-ray is one of those comical 80 production company logos and sounds before we even start the type of movie. Like, it's like da da da, da da. And these people,
they all got to get in there.
Yeah, they all have this logo that they're so proud of, that animation. They put a score to it, and you're just like, is this? Oh, it's another one, and another one, and another one. Like,
maybe that's the Bad City. Just like that's like your limbo into Bad City. Like, I have to watch like 50 like of these.
Right. And okay, so the movie, like, right off the bat, choice to do black and white photography. And it's beautiful, and it also probably helps mask Taft, California, in a way. It probably is. I don't know if I mean, the comic. My thing came with a comic book, and it was in black and white. My Blu-ray did, and I don't know if black and white is an attempt to help it feel more like it's Iran, or if it was just a stylistic choice to begin with. So but it works for it. I think this movie is probably better and more memorable in black and white than had she shot it in color.
I think so. I think there's like a lot of scenes that plays well too. The biggest being like, there's a lot of really, I think, both like gloomy and sad shots, like bodies. Like, there's like that scene where she's driving in the car, and there's like bodies like in a ditch. I just think the biggest things are like the girl herself, the girl who's played by Sheila Vand. I think her like scenes of her on her skateboard and her striped shirt, and she's wearing what's called a chador. And when she's wearing the chador and like just like it billowing in the wind and stuff, I just think that lends itself, like, it looks really beautiful in black and white. So, and I mean, like, yeah, maybe like other scenes could have been in color, but I also think it kind of helps it, like, with its being like it's described in Iranian vampire spaghetti western.
Right. Oh no.
Like, I feel like it makes sense to do it in black and white for that kind of a vibe. So I like it. I like that choice.
I mean, there's a lot of Leone in here visually, and I know that was her. It was like spaghetti western and like Sin City graphic novels was like what
Sin City, yes, absolutely.
And it is that, like, it totally, like, it's as much as there is the Leone and Corbucci and all that stuff, there is a perfect blend with Sin City in terms of how she's colorizing the black and white, like how it looks and stuff like that. And there's a lot of moments in here too, like I said with the Steven Soderbergh's recent movie, the Don Cheadle and the one that was on HBO Max. I talked about it a few episodes back on the Crow episode, but that one, I said there's a lot of moments that could be like a pulp novel cover. There's a lot of moments in this that feel like a frame from a graphic novel done in black and white perfectly. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
without, it's like effortless. Like, it's not like trying. They're just so good at work. You could pause and be like, yeah, I'd buy a frame of that, and that's cool. So
Absolutely.
but that's her good style, and the first vampire story with a Western Asia setting. Like, that's
I know, exactly. So I think it totally lends itself for black and white. I like it.
oh, for sure. We have, like, in the first act of this film, we have this drug lord, and Arash is our main character we follow, and he's got this junkie father that owes this guy, and he's like, taking out on Arash because of this. This guy is only in like 20 minutes of this movie, but he looms large. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, Saeed. Yeah, he's a character, right? And all those tattoos make him pretty memorable too.
Yes,
like
the word sex on his neck. I'm like, what did you?
He's a pimp, but like by far the most pathetic pimp I've ever. Like, he's a really trying too hard pimp.
Right.
Like, it's a lot, but I know what you mean. Like, he is not in it that long, but his presence is known all the way through until his demise.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, like, I was just impressed with, like, this time around. I'm like, yeah, this guy, like, I'm watching, I'm like, I thought he bit it a little bit later than this, but I was like, man, he's not in this much. But I remember because he's just such an a-hole, and just his look is pretty intense too. But yeah, he gets up. So Sheila Vann, when the introduction reveal of her as a vampire, like when she kills the drug dealer.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. So fluid. Her turn is so fluid. Like, it's just almost like, yes, teeth come down, but her eyes, like, she changes just with a look. And it's amazing. Like, that's
why that actress is incredible, but also, like, to capture that the way it's captured in that scene.
Oh my gosh.
It's so good. That's like, I'm like, okay, I'm falling in love with this vampire. Like, even though she's like doing something like, so, I mean, granted, I don't think he's doing something horrible by killing a horrible pimp.
Right.
Like, who's been an ass to like multiple women. So fine. But it's like, I was like, damn, I'm into this. Like, she's a badass. And then that's like one of, like, I'm saying, like, the many like feminist-ish things that are happening in this, because I just love that she's like, no, I'm gonna take him out. Even though it's like, God, like, it probably sucks as a vampire. She's like, oh, do I want to like suck this person's blood? Like, he's a horrible person. But it's epic the way that like she takes him out. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's I was just so impressed. I was just watching. I was like, man, I like rewound it. I'm like, it's really like just a quick second change in her eyes that I mean, most people just see the teeth come down, but I was like, man,
it's almost like a shark, like a, not exactly the same, but like, like how when sharks bite, like their eyes like roll over. It's like a very quick, like scary, but like also really cool moment.
Yeah, and she's great. Like, she works, but I'm just like, she's not in like a lot of stuff that crosses my path a lot of the time. So I'm like, man, I want more of her. But like, I was excited. I got this movie for review with Justin Long about some drug movie or whatever, about this weird trip that he goes on, and she was in that. I was like, oh my gosh, that's her. Holy
it's the girl.
It's the girl. Oh, I got so excited. But yeah, like, and she's a unique as hell vampire. Through history of cinema, there have been like 1 billion vampires, and I argue she has to make your top 10. I don't care where you place her.
Absolutely.
But there's none like her, and she's threatening, she's endearing, and she's fun all at the same time. And it's
absolutely,
and it doesn't feel off, it doesn't feel forced, and it's who she is. Like,
that's such a good way of putting it. Like, because I feel like if I were to tell someone who had never seen this film, like, this is a black and white Iranian film. It's like a Western. It's set in Bad City. By the way, there's a vampire. And she, like, likes to jam to music in her apartment and skateboard.
I have a question. And
Mm-hmm.
I've thought about it roughly throughout this one. This time much. Who is this woman? Like, is that her apartment? She just shows up in this town.
I don't know. Maybe she
Is
took
that
the
her
person.
place? Did she take it? Is she trying? Like, I thought this time around, like, is she trying to insert herself into a society and try to see it through their eyes and do it? And she found this apartment and she gets into like music because there's a thing there and there's all this stuff on the wall.
Right.
So she thinks that's what a person does. Like, there's a lot of attempts at her to try to find humanity kind of in this. She's tempted with humanity, and this looks like her kind of exploration of it, and while trying to use her vampiric ways to improve the city. But I don't know. This time I was like, I just got this question, like, who is this woman? Like, we know she's a vampire. That's simple. But there's more to her. And I was like, I've always thought, oh, that's her apartment. But I'm like, wait, she just appeared in this town. Is this someone else's place? Did she kill somebody to have this place, and she's trying to assume this person's role in the I don't know. My mind.
No, I get it. I mean, like right out the gate, it's like obviously like some like basics I feel like with her in terms of thinking about her character. It's like that's an interesting way to put it. It's like, yeah, like has she always been in this town? Did she come into this town? And obviously, like as a vampire, like if we're thinking of mythology of them, I mean, like she could be the way that she looks like in her 20s, but obviously that could have been however long ago. Like, who knows, like how old she's. Like, there's a lot of like questions that we don't know, which makes sense too, because vampires are always mysterious. So like, it would probably ruin everything if like we need to. Like, I don't need her Edward Cullen backstory. Okay, like
no, she's Yojimbo. She's Clint Eastwood in Fistful of Dollars. We know them. We get details on them, but we don't know them.
Right.
We know them because the movie is following them, but we don't get depth. They don't give us depth. We only can pay attention to their actions, their facials, and how they interact with people, and that's all we get. And that's all we need. That's all we need.
I will say something though that I do think is interesting. If we're thinking about this in the perspective of she's, a female, was a person at some point before turning into a vampire, and Bad City is in Iran, and this is like based off of like an Iran that is modern, and that it's in our modern times where like, women technically, have to cover up like when they're outdoors. Because obviously like we have scenes, like there's a party scene with Arash and a girl who's like a princess, like, I don't know, type girl, like has a fancy house. And like, when they go into the party, people are drinking, there's drugs, like no one's wearing coverings, anything like that. So I think about it in this perspective of, it's really interesting because for women in that country to be a vigilante like this, to, as like the title suggests, like, she's roaming the streets, alone at night, like that's something that culturally you would not like do. So I think that there's something like really fascinating about her character in that sense. And I wonder if I were to think of her backstory, I almost wonder if it's like her being a vampire is like her being like rebellious and getting to do these things that maybe she would not have done as a regular woman, but as a vampire with, the powers and the capabilities that she has, like, and fangs, which are super cool, all of those things, like that gives her agency to be able to do these things and to go after bad men in Bad City and take them out. So that's just something that I've thought about. Definitely didn't think about this the first time I watched it. The first time I was like, it's a vampire with skateboards. But like the more and more I've watched it, I think about that aspect of her of like, there is, sure, maybe she could have been a vigilante as like a regular person, but it would be difficult.
Well, and I think like she takes to Arash because when they meet, he came from the party, he trips acid where he didn't want to, but he's also dressed like Dracula and with fake fangs.
Yeah.
And when she meets him out, she's out wandering, he's out wandering, and sees like him lost. She's kind of lost. They're both searching for something, and she sees him. She's like, oh, you're trying to imitate and be me, and I'm trying to imitate and be like you, because she's searching for like testing out being what humans are supposedly do, and he looks like he's imitating Dracula being out in the night, and that's maybe why she texts to him more. Like
think
she's like,
so.
I've got somebody here. We're both in this place, so and it's just by chance that I don't know why you dressed like Dracula to that party, but hey,
I mean, Dracula's a cool costume, so I get that. I think what's also interesting, though, maybe thinking again, just like if she's been around for a very long time, depending on whatever that is, I can imagine she's also picked up very, very well on a lot of signs that make for a good person or a bad person.
Right.
So maybe like with Arash, like the reason she takes to him and is cool with him and doesn't like just outright go snack on his neck and call it a day is she's like, this is one of the good humans. This is a good person, or at least good for now. Like she takes a liking to him, I think. So I think she's definitely developed a sense of who is bad and who is good, maybe because of her time roaming streets and taking pimps out and that kind of a thing.
Well, too, like he has a cast on his arm in the beginning of the movie, and when she meets him, which would just showcase to her that he's vulnerable, he can be hurt. And then we also have the rich girl that has the nose job, and she's kind of nicer to him, and then that comes off, and then she's somebody else. After. So I don't know if that signifies something between them or not, but
no, that makes sense.
I think this movie's deep as fuck.
I think so, but I think what you said. Yeah, no, I think that makes total sense. Like if he literally physically is showing that he's vulnerable. Also, I mean, like you said, like when she meets him, it's like he is like tripped out. Like he does not know what is going on. Right. Super easy prey. But instead, like they connect. They have like a dance party of their own.
That is an amazing scene, by the way. She goes, so people listening, watch the movie. You can find it in a lot of places. Free to watch, legally to watch. Get a library card, folks. Get Canopy or Hoopla. So like she goes, we had this scene before, like same camera angle where she goes to play a record and just listens to a record. But this time he's there and he comes up behind her and it's like slow. And I wrote down here because I like it, but I said, this film lets people act. There's lots of long takes, lots of non-dialogue emoting and speaking. And there's the scene where she brings Arash home and puts the record on is deliberately slow and more interesting than most movies that come out every year. Just this one scene. There's a lot going on and you just kind of soak it in and you don't know how this is going to turn out, how they react to each other. It's slow, and all she does in the scene is turn around. He comes up behind her, listen to the music, and turn around. And that's all this scene is, but it's lengthy, it breathes, it's real, and you watch the actors, and it just fucking works. Like
I 100%. It's interesting because I have read probably so many reviews about this film as well. And it's interesting because, I think there are some people who get that and really enjoy those moments. And then there are critics who wish things would basically speed up.
Keep cutting. Keep going.
Where's the dialogue? The thing that I think, again, with this film, for one, like the story, and two, if we're really, again, thinking about her character, I just keep thinking back to it. And this conversation is making me think maybe more than ever just about who she is and her personality. She doesn't talk. She's not extremely talkative. Like she has like her moments, but she's not a very talkative person or vampire, I guess,
she's very calculated with whatever she
says. And I just think about it as like, it kind of makes me think if she's been around for however long as a vampire, even if it was a short time, I just wonder if like for a creature, this otherworldly creature that like technically, I guess, lives forever, like unless something happens, it maybe that like creates this kind of like, there is no sense of urgency anymore. Because with people, you need to fill time and space with things to do and things to say. But like for a vampire, they're kind of just like, I'm going to be here. And so I think that's number one. And then I think number two, maybe just her personality also. I mean, you can have like introverted vampires. They don't all have to be extroverted, vicarious, extremely charming Like they don't all have to be that. And I do appreciate that that's the kind of vampire that the girl is that, yeah, she's calculative. She's very like insightful. She's very perceptive. And in a lot of ways, she also makes me think of like the way a predator would stalk prey. They're just, checking things out, feeling things out. And she knows she's not going to be in trouble. She knows that she's like an extremely powerful being. So I feel like that also adds a layer because it's like she can take her time and do the things that she wants in the time that she wants. So, yeah.
And there's things she can't help. Like there's a part where she gets her ears pierced and it forces her fangs out and we find out like scene. There's things that are just beyond her control that are reactions to it.
Yeah, so she can still be jolted. Like there are little things like that can happen for sure. I love that scene right away where she's just like, it's like a little quick.
Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Yeah. Yeah. And she, when you talk about like one of her most talkative moments is where she's threatening a child that she takes the skateboard from, which is in a way kind of humorous.
Yeah.
She does it. And this poor little kid, that she's like, you didn't see nothing. Or,
right.
You know. So yeah, like she's very, and a lot of those, like you're talking about people talking about like this is, if she want, like this is going for Leone. It's going to have long takes. It's going to appreciate its surrounding. It's going to make the most of every frame. It's going to make them count. And you can't see that. Even the people who would borrow things from Leone, like your Peckinpahs and stuff, while they made fast cuts and action scenes, they still knew how to like appreciate surroundings, breathing, acting, things like that. And that's the thing, like a lot of, yes, an actor's performance when they win Best Actor does somewhat go to it should go to an editor because they pick the best takes. They put the best take. They help piece together. But, you know, like there's too much piecing together almost. You got to like just let the camera roll, let them act.
Right.
And you can fulfill, you can engage people, you can fulfill everything if they're doing it. Because an actor is important. Like everything on a film is important. But, you know, there's always, when I lived in Los Angeles working on films and stuff, the actors would always tell you they were the most important part of the film. The director would tell you he was. The writer swore it was him. The guy behind the camera was like, aha, my eye makes it go good. You know, like everybody fights, but some can overcome lesser qualities of another, and you know, you can let people act, let them try to take over the scene. Anna Lily's in no danger of that here. She's fantastic, but she also respects the actors and knows what she has, and it's like, watch these people. Yeah, and it works a lot. And shame on the people who went to fast cut. I'm like,
I will say though, something that to add some context to, I think that's important is for A Girl Who Walks Home Alone at Night, that film, obviously, like it's filmed, you know, here in the States, but it's an Iranian film. It's like supposed to be like an Iranian village and all of that. When it comes to Iranian horror films, there's not like a massive catalog of these. Like people make them, but in terms of like ones that have done very well or are very well known, I'd say like the big ones that I think about, there's Babak Anbari's Under the Shadow. That's about a mother and daughter experiencing strange things that can be caused by jinn. Jinn, for those who like aren't familiar with that, I mean, it's like a term from like Islam, but it's basically like, you know, like the way that we consider like angels and demons and like spirits and things like that. Like that's
are you talking about like the DJINN?
DJINN, jinn.
The Wishmaster.
Yeah, so it's like those kind of like that thing. It's interesting because I want to say like Dungeons and Dragons has like references jinn. I don't think they do it correctly, but that's the best thing I can align it to. Okay. So there's like films like that. You have films like A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. You know, that's like, you know, a vampire preying on shitty people and then forming this like relationship, this chemistry with like a regular person. A recent film that I covered that I would also highly recommend. This, you know what? This also is kind of like A Girl Walks Home Alone. I mean, it's predominantly in Farsi. It was shot here in the U.S. It's a predominantly Iranian cast and crew. Like pretty much everyone is. Hold on. So with Kuro Shahari's The Night, it's a film that's set in the U.S. It's predominantly an Iranian cast and crew, and that's like a film that. You know, it's very obvious that it's in LA. So like, it's very obvious that like, it's, they're here. But what I like about it is that it's in what I guess you would call like the Iran away from Iran, which is Tehrangelis, like LA and stuff. Like it's where like all the expat Iranians come to live is Los Angeles. And that film's almost like The Shining in that, it's like a horror film happening in a hotel. It's a great film. But in the end of the day, like there's not like a massive amount of these films to either draw inspiration from, like for Iranian filmmaking, like there's a good amount. I feel like Iranian cinema, at least the way that I see it, like there's a lot of really great dramas. There is a lot of good comedy, but it's like horror. And I also just don't think like, if we're talking about this, like in the scope of this whole project that we're doing, I don't think people like go horror film, Iran. Like, I don't think like that's, whereas like I, for example, have been like really into all of the great Korean horror films that are coming out and have been out for a while. Like there are like other countries where I'm like, oh, like they do great horror cinema. Iran is not one that I would immediately, even being Iranian myself and watching his films, it's not like that's what would come to mind. But I think the reason that's why I love A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night is it's such a unique take on like what a quote like horror film could be, even though it's not like horror, it's like a Western. But
right.
Like, I think like when some people hear what it's about and they're like, oh, it's a vampire film. I'm like, no, it's like not like entirely like scary and terrifying.
It's spooky, but it's not like scary. Yeah.
Right. And thinking like what we're talking about with the acting in it, I just think there's so many scenes that lend like those long drawn out, like, and I don't even want to say drawn out, like those long scenes where people are just taking moments to interact with each other. So we can see the chemistry, like, especially with Arash and the girl, like the chemistry that we're seeing grow between them. That I think is a beautiful way to kind of look at how Iranian quote horror can be done right. Because Iranian cinema, I think because of the culture, because of what's happened in that country, people love maybe watching what they're kind of experiencing a lot in real life. So drama can be very popular in that country. So I'm wondering if there's somewhat an influence of that in this film, like these really like, I feel like emotionally intense scenes and takes that are happening where like, not like a lot of actions going down, but like when you see the girl turn in moments that you're like, is she going to bite? Is she okay with this person? You know what I mean? Right. Like there are moments like that where you don't know what's happening next, and not a lot needs to happen also for you to really appreciate the scene. So that's just something I wanted to add, because I've been thinking about that as well with this film and other Iranian horror films that I watch. Is I have noticed that there's a lot of that, like in The Night, in Kurdish Shahari's The Night, there's a lot of scenes like that where it's just like he's in a hotel and there's like, and he, there's a haunting that's happening, or he's being haunted by spirits. And there's just a lot of scenes where he's just like staring down stairwells or like looking off at something in the distance, or there's like, it's with him and his wife. And like, maybe they're like sitting in silence in their hotel room. Like there's just a lot of moments where like, and maybe this is it too. Maybe it's meant to make people a little uncomfortable. Cause like when something is sitting for like a beat too long, you're like, something going to jump at me? Like what's going on? Right. So I think like that's something that I've noticed across a lot of Iranian horror films that I think comes through in this film as well.
That's a good point. That's really,
yeah.
I mean, I don't watch enough of those, but I'm hearing what you're saying.
We can.
I definitely want to dig more into their film culture.
Yeah,
for sure. Definitely all that. There's also, let me mention Arash's father in this movie. He's a heroin junkie, and he apparently something happened to his mom, and his father's never really gotten over it, and has returned to. He's got a really bad heroin habit, and I thought this movie conveyed really cool his father's junkie need and desire for the heroin is far more terrifying in this film than the vampire's cool and collected desire for blood. Like they're parallels to each other. They even have a scene where his father's on one end of the street and the vampire, she's on the other side, and she mimics his movements, and it freaks him out. But that's like they're the same. Like I need to inject. I need this.
I literally have this note I agree with you. I literally have this note at some point where I think I wrote like this film has like a vampire, but there's also I don't know. How would I say this? Vampiric, like
Yep.
vampiric ways. Like characteristics that are happening. Like biggest one definitely being like the drug addiction of the father. Also maybe just like that's an emotionally draining relationship.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Just there's things like that. Also, the city itself seems to be like a draining, dark, depressing city. So there's a lot of like those elements of like what a vampire is. Those elements are coming through. Actually, I almost feel like in more so in some other characters than the actual vampire that we have.
Yeah. The real monsters were the people. Yeah. Like that's, I mean, yeah. And it's a great reflection of like, there's this thing we're taught to, maybe this is a reflection on American culture towards the West Asian stuff. Like here's a thing that you are taught is scary, looks scary. You said it's scary, but look at all this shit around. Who's the scariest here? Who's doing the most harm? Like, granted, she's killing people, but but who is, when you're watching the film, she's killing bad people for one that we see. She kind of limits it to it, but whose actions are scarier? Who's abusing people? Who's hurting people on a deeper level than the vampire? The vampire.
I mean, she's really just going right. No, she's just really going after, as far as I can tell, like bad people. So like, whereas like Arash with his father, I mean, they're battling each other, and I mean, I could understand in terms of like a storyline. Like, I mean, to have a father like that who.
Yeah. And he blames him for it all. He doesn't blame himself one bit. And he also, there's a prostitute in the film who's a returning point that the father has over and injects her against her own will with the heroin. Granted, she doesn't put up a huge fight, but she's a very professional woman and and holds herself in a professional manner. So it would be against her to like. It was more of like, I don't want to do this, but he's paying, and this is where my night takes me, I guess.
Yes.
But it just shows what more of a monster his father is. With it.
Actually, something that I think about is, so I think before that scene, there's a moment where, so the prostitute is Ati, and Ati like worked for Saeed, and there's like some scenes earlier where like Saeed's like trying to force her to like do stuff with him. It's like really upsetting. And so there's a moment where Ati is like walking the street herself alone at night. Right. And the girl is following her. And like, because at the start of this film, the girl was at Saeed's apartment, I guess like took some of his money, and then she gives that money to Ati, like the payment that Saeed should have been giving Ati. Yep. And there was like a conversation, and the best I remember it is that it's that Ati, maybe because of, I mean, it's partially obviously because of her line of work and what she is doing, but maybe also just as a person, and maybe having lived in bad city, maybe this is what happens to all people who live in bad city. She like doesn't know what it is to like desire anymore, and maybe even to feel a bit. And that's sad. Like, she's drained of that. So then like you're saying, like later when she has that scene with Arash's father, you know, maybe she doesn't want to do these drugs, but I also just wonder if, as a sad element of her character, she's just almost like, okay, like what else do I have to live for right now? Like she's a very drained shell of a person. And for a lot of characters in Bad City, like that's what I feel like they are. Like this is not like a fun town. This is not like lively, energetic people with fulfilling lives. Like everyone seems to be very depressed, not a lot going on. The only person who maybe seems to be having a good time, it's the princess Shada, like the girl who has a party and Arash goes to. Like that's the only person who I'm like, she's living it up. But even that girl seems like hollow or shallow. She's just like about having a good time. Shada, that girl, that princess, she's just about like having a good time, having parties. Like she's shallow and hollow. So I don't know. I think it's interesting, all of these characters that Ati, the prostitute, Shada, the dad, Saeed, the pimp, like I don't know. They've all been like drained of something. Like they're not like full people
They've
living
given
full
up.
lives.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's in a town where there's like a big production, like is it oil or something that it's draining the earth. Like it's
a good point. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
Very intentionally set to that area. Like and that's the lifeblood of the town, and that's all they have. And once that like goes, like what is this place? And it's already seems to have maybe gone. It looks like the town's kind of barren. There's not overly popular. Granted, it's a very low budget film, which it's like just like was it even over $100,000 to shoot this? I can't even.
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't feel like it needed a large budget.
It looks like millions, but these are my favorite directors. They just like now you got your James Wans and your Lee Wanells that take $10 and make it look like 10 million, which those are my favorite directors. The old John Carpenter type people where you're like, here's $5 and it looks, you can give a guy 80 million, it won't even look as good. She always got that talent. Like, keep throwing things away, folks. Yeah, but yeah, it's like a lot of that is maybe low budget, but it fits into the theme of the film. The town's being drained of people. And yeah,
it's super sad. And also something else I just thought about too is when I'm trying to think of when it happens, because something that's like a minor detail is that actually no, it's not a minor detail. What am I talking about? So it's like when after like I guess the dad does the drugs with Ati, I guess there's a later point where he's like suffering from like withdrawal, and he's like having thoughts in his head, and he thinks that the cat, there's like a little cat that's like in this film,
right? Yeah,
like a little adorable cat, and the dad thinks the cat is his dead wife, and I think that's like I think like one of those moments where I thought that was interesting, because I was like, it could be like that's just like what he's hallucinating or thinking, but then also I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if like that's just like a very strong messaging of like, yeah, like the mom's spirit lives on in this cat. Like, I mean, this is a spooky enough film as it is. So I think that makes sense. And then I think I remember after that scene, it's like Arsh like throws his dad out because he's just like, you're done. Like, I'm done dealing with you and your addiction and all the issues that it's like causing like in our lives. And that's, I think later on, like his father dies because he takes more drugs.
Well,
like
no, the vampire, she does. Doesn't she take
that's right. Yes. Yes, that's right. The girl, I think that's one of the scenes that like I, for a moment was like hoping, don't do that. Like, cause I'm just like, the next thing I'm thinking is like, this guy, Arnish is going to find this out. Like, this is not a good situation, but the other side of it is this is what she does. She, it's because Hossein goes to, that's the father's name. Hossein goes to Ati's apartment to try and like force her to do stuff, like to take heroin again. And the girl comes and saves that situation from happening. And takes out the dad. But that's like her MO. She takes out bad men. Like that's like her thing. But I remember that scene just being like even from the first time watching, I was like, this is gonna cause some issues in their relationship.
Right.
If he finds out somehow, some way. So yeah, very like intense.
And when Arash finds the body, that's one of the most haunting things in the film.
God.
It's so real. It's so like the look on his dad's face, just sitting there staring at him. And his reaction to it is just because it's a reaction of like, I'm not surprised, but we're here now. I thought it wouldn't be this soon, but we're here now. Like that. That's kind of what it's not super upset, super disappointed. It was something he expected, but now it's here. Like but the way they filmed the dad's body, the way the actor is posed and looking, it's spooky. It's real. It feels really real. Like,
I mean, there's a lot of elements in this film I feel like that are like, because it's like, yes, it's a film, but I think Annalie does a good job of, I think like there's like a nice like balance between things feeling like so realistic that makes it terrifying. Like that makes it really scary. Like that's a very real scenario that obviously can happen to someone who has an addiction. So like that's depressing. And it's also just heartbreaking because again, you think of like this whole film, like we've seen these two fighting. It's a very it's a very toxic relationship between a father and a son, what they're dealing with and what they're going through. So like, yeah, so it's the relationship between Arash and his father. It's toxic. It's not a good relationship, but they're still father and son.
Mm-hmm.
So there's obviously still some emotions like seeing his father like that. And then I think like Arash's next move is to like go and find this girl that he's connected with. He wants to go and find her and like run away. And maybe he's just realizing this town is literally bad. Like I don't want to be here anymore. And that's when that cat reappears. Cause I think there was a moment earlier in the film where like she's given the cat
Mm-hmm.
she gets the cat. And for her to have the cat, he realizes like, okay, like this is something's amiss because this cat should not be here. And these like are like in the final moments of this film. I mean, I don't know whose heart would not be racing because you're just like, okay, what's going to happen when he finds out? Like, is he going to find out? Okay, I think he's going to find out. What's going to happen if he finds out? Is she going to take him out too? Like, Can she? Would she? And maybe in the end, I have read so many like theories and thoughts on like the ending of this film because it kind of ends as mysteriously as it started. Like we don't really know what they're going to do because he realizes what's going on and they're like in a car and like they're trying to leave Bad City and they go off together. I remember thinking at the end, like I was almost like a little upset. I was like, really? Like that's where we're going to end it. But then at the same time, I'm like, I kind of get it because it's almost like that's like how like again like dark and mysterious and moody this whole film is. I'm like I'm okay with not having like a lot of resolution at the end. But I don't know, like I'm curious what you thought because like for me, I remember thinking that ending, I was like, damn it, but also I love this
right
at the same time.
Well, it's time to get out of town, time to get out of Bad City.
To get out of town, yeah.
And he's going from being a caretaker of one troubled individual with an addiction to a vampire who has a bloodthirst. So it's kind of like transference of what he is. And maybe he becomes, with how subservient he is and stuff, but granted, he's smitten with her, but he could become like a Renfield-esque character for her. The guy who's obsessed with serving Dracula but never becomes the vampire. That sort of maybe the role he's destined to take with her for the time being. But, it's left to our imagination. It's left to what you saw in the movie. Like that, and I love that. I love it. I know people hate those endings, but I'm like, I like to think the thing I love about films is mental exercises with me. Like I love to have that. I love ambiguity. I love thinking of things. And there's a fear in filmmaking nowadays to not allow people to do that because people get upset when they have to think or challenge themselves or, enjoy a film beyond the movie. And granted, I know there's some people that movies don't mean as much. They're an escape. They just want to go chew popcorn, see some explosions and go home. Fine. People
don't want to think. Like they just
fine, but don't bash the movies that do these things and
because there's obviously an audience for that. And something actually I just thought about too is like what we were talking about before in terms of like some of these scenes that could seem slow and like kind of either or delayed or like we're taking an extra little beat. I mean, when I think about the film overall, I mean, it's got, I don't know how to say, like it's all, that's also like a vampire quality, like this kind of like moody, slow, hushed, like Predator kind of like vibe. I feel that. And also with this, when it comes to this film, it's like, it's slow, it's moody, got this it's hushed like vibe. I feel like that is also like what a vampire is. And the other thing too, like what the ending is, this whole film in a lot of ways, it's a very like we see it as a Western, it's a vampire film, but it's a very unlikely like romance like
Right.
story that's happening. And there have been, I mean, like if anyone like has an issue with the ending, I mean, I feel like there have been so many romantic films that end in like kind of like uncertainty, like you're not really sure, like you got all your questions answered about what's going on in relationships and stuff like that. Like, so when I think of it that way too, like I think it's fine.
Do people need a title card? Like, and they got an apartment and lived.
I need the end credits scene where like all the slideshow pics are happening in the credits of them, like the vampire and him moving in together in good city.
We got a pet bat together. Like,
I if someone wanted to spoof this, that could be decide like it's good city, but no, I think it's really beautiful. And actually, it's even though like this wasn't available at the time, it makes me think of a lot of the things that I enjoyed about and this is like a very random like line to, or I guess like a connection to make, but WandaVision in the MCU, I really loved that series for how it explored like love and the many forms of love and also grief and trauma and that stuff. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why I really like this film, because like it's not a romance that like it's typical, and there's a lot of people who need a lot of therapy because a lot of shit has gone down. So I don't know. I kind of like it for that. I like that I'm personally, and maybe this is I'm the dark goddess of the underworld, I like romantic films that are edgy and moody and maybe even sad, like, because that's not all relationships are perky and happy 24/7. So I kind of like that that's what this is. And I like that that's in the film. I like that it wasn't just like about a vampire being an anti-hero vigilante. I love that there's a romance that's happening, and it's complicated. So yeah, I kind of like that part of it too.
Yeah. Hard agree. Before we wrap up this conversation, which is a great conversation, by the way, there's some things there's one thing I wanted to point out that an image that I don't think I've that this movie gives us that I don't think I've ever seen before: a vampire soaking in a bath. It's not blood; it's a bath.
Homegirl needs self-care.
Yeah, she's just laying in, and I'm like,
self-care Sunday.
That's really cool. I'm like, I wonder if she thought like I've never seen a vampire sitting in a bathtub, so let's throw that in there. And it's just
I get that.
And I was like, that's awesome, because I was like, I can't think of any. I've seen them in pools of blood and all this stuff, but just taking a bath, I thought it was soaking in water.
When you think about it, I mean, granted, I'm not an expert, so like if the interwebs knows more than me, let me know. But like I couldn't name a ton of like, other than like Castlevania, which like I'm a big fan of. I can't think of like a lot of other shows or films. Like I'm not big into comics, and I'm sure comics and gaming probably have more. But like in terms of like really popular films and shows that are about vampires, I don't know a lot that center on female vampires.
Right.
So like that to me is where I'm like, those kinds of scenes, like her jamming to music, having a little dance party by herself, having like a little soak in the bathtub. I'm like, that tracks, like for someone who's got whoever and how like eternity to live and is like,
right.
I just want to chill.
Have you ever seen Dracula's Daughter?
No.
It's the sequel to the original Bela Lugosi Universal one. It's but it's a very underseen, very underappreciated sequel, because it's not like just not Dracula again. And it's one of the first like queer horror films too. It's really really cool.
I have never seen it, but that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's only like an hour long. All those old Universal monster movies are like barely clocking over an hour. But this is the sequel to it, and it's an interesting direction, and it's really interesting. One of the first strong female vampire characters put to film, and the Universal stuff, they were subtly getting away with a lot of explorations with like James Whale and Bride of Frankenstein doing some crazy stuff too. But Dracula's Daughter's pretty cool, underseen, underappreciated little movie. I never watched until they put out like the DVD sets back in the day. I was like, what's this? And I watched it, and I didn't. The first time I saw it, I think I was too young. I didn't appreciate it. But going back to it older now with re-released on Blu-ray. I'm like, I really like that's a go-to one for me. Like, really like it's moody, more interesting character, and a lot less of the same monster stuff that you get with a lot of them later down the road. So
I will definitely check that out because I think, like I said, I don't like, I wouldn't know that many female vampire characters off the top of my head that like have like a really
that aren't like underworld.
Well, actually, you know what? I think the only other one that I'm thinking about that I mean, not that like she has a massive role in this film, but like Dusk Till Dawn and Salma Hayek.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, amazing vampire, very attractive vampire. Well, like, I'm just saying, like, that also, like, she didn't have, I mean, she has an amazing scene, like when she comes out and dances with the snake. But like, best scene ever. Like, I think that's when I realized I was also attracted to women at the same. I was like, okay, that tracks. But it's one of those things where, like, yeah, like you don't get a lot of those like prominent female vampire characters, like in like that I have found to be extremely popular and well known. Like, this is the like, if I ever talk about, if I'm ever having, you know, a vampire group chat, which is super common, and like we're talking about vampires that we love, like Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Everyone loves this character, this vampire, but it's just awesome because, like, I mean, she's a female vampire, and we don't get a lot of those in like pop culture that are extremely memorable. Like, again, like the only other ones I can think of are the characters that I love from like the Castlevania game and then the anime that came out recently on Netflix. So, but yeah, I mean, if she needs a bubble bath back on that, like, get your bubble bath because you've been doing a lot of work in Bad City. So it makes sense.
And one last thing, I'm wondering if Anneli Amirpour is projecting some of herself through the vampire, because it's one thing to just be like, there's a character there, but the fact Sheila Vand, and I don't know if you've seen what Anneli Amirpour looks like, they look pretty similar.
I know exactly what you mean, because I think when I've looked this film up before, I almost was like, wait, who?
And Amirpour did the long shot skateboarding stuff because she's a skateboarder, so she body doubled for Sheila Vand. But like, look at them, like, it's one thing to have like a character in a film, but then to cast someone that looks just like you to do it, like, there's some of you in that vampire that you're telling
I mean,
us.
I could totally see that, and I mean, who wouldn't?
Yeah.
Want to have that 100%, but I mean, I think that could totally make sense for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And also, if you have the Kino Lorber Blu-ray on it or pick it up, it's got a great Q&A with her, and the guy doing the Q&A is Roger Corman, and her doing it together, and he's loves this film. Of course, you gotta love it, but he loves the film, and he compares. He's like, man, your works reminded me of when Francis Ford Coppola was like my assistant, and he made these stupid little films. But he's like, this is like talent on a level that I hope great things come just like Francis, because I see that kind of level of skill and craft right there with you on this one. He's like, he has to hold himself back from geeking out about the movie, which is funny to see this old man asking her about it and talking about it. And but that's a great featurette to check out on there. So
absolutely,
Girl Walks Home Alone, watch it
a lot, and recommend it to all your friends.
What else? We're just talking about a little extra stuff that we do, you know, movies, music, TV, books, games, whatever you've been into lately. So Sharareh, since last time, what else has happened?
What else has happened? I decided to entertain myself recently by watching the recent Suicide Squad movie. You ever heard of it?
Kind of watched that myself.
It was an experience. It was. I actually I didn't know if I was gonna like it because I wasn't the biggest fan of the first. Like,
the first one's garbage. It's okay to say it.
I was like, am I gonna get trolled? No, like,
first one, it's barely a movie. So, anyways, yes, continue.
No. I think I really do like the second one. I will say it's outrageous. It is very weird. I have a lot of questions about like a lot of like. There's just some really intense, like, gory scenes where I was like, I felt like there's a what is that film? Not film. I am like messing up because I am tired. There's the Boys, like that show.
Yeah.
Amazon. It made me think of it, honestly, a bit, like some of the style and stuff, like the way like superheroes and violence. It's fun, but yeah, I don't know. I will say, like, I think I would recommend it to watch.
It's
I mean,
awesome. I had a great time with it. It's very James Gunn, like the violence and gore stuff. Like if you've seen his other stuff,
yeah,
that's right. And he came from Trauma too, so there's a lot of that kind of feel. So a lot of people point out like he made a fucking $100 million Trauma movie with this. I'm like, kind of. There's elements there, and Lloyd Kaufman appears when they go into that bar. I think Peacemaker shoves him over, the head guy of Trauma, which is he put in Guardians too. It's a lot of fun, and I tell you what, I think we live in the best of both worlds, having DC and Marvel movies. This isn't me knocking one, but like the thing I love about the DC movies is they aren't afraid to go crazy. They aren't afraid to really let a director make a movie. And I think we're all better for it. And I love the bonkersness of like getting the Suicide Squad. I love Birds of Prey. I thought that was just wacky, awesome.
Of Prey.
I love Shazam. Its wholeheartedness got this kind of like 80s, really nails the 80s Amblin type feel and has a good message. Then you get whack, like you get that you fucking like Joker, like going for the Scorsese weird thing with grand filming. You get like traditional like Wonder Woman 84, but
you know what? That's a good point, because I wonder if it's like with DC, it's like
fuck it, let's just fucking like
I mean they're in fucking mode, and I wonder if it's like Marvel is the like older sibling and is like, I've got to like, keep my appearances, like got a reputation, and like Marvel films are amazing. I love, like I am more of a Marvel fan, like in that sense. Like I am obsessed with all of the films, the comics, the games, all of it. I'm into all of it. Because I'm Team Loki, so like, of course, I would be like obsessed with like someone who like loves chaos. But like at the same time, I get what you're saying about DC, and like that. I think as much as like I probably lean more towards like Marvel for a lot of stuff. At the end of the day, it's like I need them both, and I think it's like they balance each other out.
Right.
So I really enjoy it, and like DC's kind of like the troublesome like younger sibling that's like, fuck it, like I'm gonna be crazy, and I'm gonna go crazy.
I wasn't even the world's greatest fan of Aquaman, but like I appreciate and I admire the hell out of that movie. Like, and a friend of mine said recently, he's like, they just go so big in Aquaman that finale makes Avengers Endgame look like a small indie film, like just the grandiose, like just going nuts for it. And I think that's great. Like, and I like the playfulness and the weird, like the action scenes of the DC movies are on a different level, because like Marvel with the action, there's a lot of same because they use the same second unit to direct a lot of those movies, whereas DC's just like, you pick your people, you can direct them, all that. That's why Deakins won't do a Marvel movie. He's been offered twice and turned him down, because he's like, if I'm not doing the whole thing, I'm not doing it. So yeah, just the sheer nuttiness, craziness.
Where else are you gonna get a murderous starfish alien?
Awesome, right? Like, yeah.
So like for me with DC, I'm also like not as familiar with, like, because I'm not as familiar with a lot of it. Like I'm not familiar as much with the comics. I'm gonna highly rec I'm gonna do like a side promo, which is like on Hollywood Reporter's site. We had some really great insight into like Starro, like his like backstory. It's wild, and I feel like that, like, I obviously, for me, I wasn't expecting that because I wasn't familiar at all. I didn't know what was about to happen. When I saw that shit come out the building and like all the little mini starfish like flying out of its like starfish armpits, I was just like, I don't know how to not love this, because I just love weird. So I'm here for the weirdness. And I also love, I mean, of all the characters, like, I love me some Harley Quinn. I love Margot Robbie. She's incredible. Like her like fight scene that she has when she's escaping. Yeah. I was like, fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
Fantastic. All of it. Also like Polka Dot Man, Weasel. Like there's so many things happening.
They let Joel Kinnaman have freaking fun. Like he looks like he's having a good time. And I like him as an actor, and like, he doesn't get used right all the time. Poor dude had to be RoboCop. But like, he usually comes off boring in movies when I'm like, man, he was on that show The Killing and he did really good. And he's in, so if you see some of his hometown films, because he's from, is it Sweden? Is that where he's from? can't remember. He's got charisma out the ass in those, and then here in America, it's like, "Hi, I'm Joel Kinnaman, and I'm action guy in a movie." Like, but he's fun here. Like, no, you're totally right. Like, it's Margot Robbie's character is just fun, and if you ever, so this one's close to on the CW. They have their own DC line of shows. There's Legends of Tomorrow, which is my favorite of the bunch, and it is fucking bonkers like this. Yeah, they actually
Legends is.
They did this kaiju shit with the Starro thing before already, but with the giant furry thing before. But yeah, that one's kind of.
I just think like that's why it's just such a fun. I mean, like obviously everyone's got their personal taste. Maybe some people don't want stuff to go that over the top.
I don't like jokes in my superhero movies.
I know. I just want heroes and killing bad guys.
It's totally obvious too in that movie that they waited till the last second for Will Smith to tell them no. Like, I mean, they just scratched a name out of the script and changed it. Like, it's pretty funny, but it works. Idris Elba's great. So
I think honestly though, I'm into it. Like his facial expression, his final facial expression when he's on the plane and that little rat is sitting on his lap and he's just like,
right.
I think it works. I was here for it. I love it. So I don't know. I would, you know what? I would recommend it if you're in for like a bonkers night, maybe take an edible and watch it. I don't know. It's hilarious. It's a wild ride. But that is my what else and my what the hell.
There you go. Yes.
What a ride. It was amazing.
Gotcha. My what else is the novelization of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh.
I flew through it, and it is awesome. Wow. Like if Quentin Tarantino, after he retires, just writes novelizations for his books like this, I'm okay with that. I'm fine. This gives it's the most interesting way to adapt the film.
Okay.
It gives you, because for people who have maybe never seen the film, it's an intriguing book. For people who have seen the film, it adds changes ideas, and it's got a different agenda. There's similar levels agendas of what the movie wants to do and what the book wants to do.
I enjoyed the film. If we're talking about another bonkers film, another like absolute what the hell every scene.
I'm like obsessed with that movie. Like that movie, that's one of those movies you watch and it has not left my mind. Once Upon a Time, and this book is even better. Like I highly recommend. Like it's got people, like it's written as if it was written back then with the mentality. So there's some harsh language. There's some slang terms that don't fly anymore, but they're not meant with any kind of like. They're meant to be those characters, not like the ill intent of a writer, which is hard for people to take sometimes. But sometimes there'll be a scene from the movie, but from the perspective of the person we didn't see it in the movie. So it'll be written from that. Like,
oh, that's interesting.
The part where he goes to the Manson camp at the Spawn Ranch.
I remember that.
Told from the perspective of the girl in the house, not for Brad Pitt.
Interesting. Okay, I could see. I feel like then, like, if you were like really into that film, that kind of element would be interesting for sure to kind of get like those extra perspectives. So that makes sense.
And scenes happen in different ways. They happen. Yeah, like it's really cool. You get more background on why things are the way they are, and just extra bits that feel like they were like cut out or something. And it ends. I guess the ending of the book was shot, but didn't get used in the movie. So I know that did happen. But yeah, the book ends differently. The ending of the movie happens in a different spot in the book than it did in the movie.
Oh, okay.
It really took me. I was like, oh,
of a film's ending. Don't know if there's been one in a minute that had me just scream. That just had me go, what the hell? That film's ending was a trip.
It was a trip.
It was a ride.
Literally for some of the characters.
It was a trip.
Yeah. But no, big fan of the movie. The book, it it's been a long time since I was reading a book, and I was like, oh, damn it, it's getting to the end. Normally I get excited. I'm like, I'm going to conquer this thing. I'm like, add more pages. Like, it's a really good read. I'm stunned. Like Tarantino just, fuck that guy in his writing, man. Like, I want skills. So, yeah, it's just, and it really conveys his voice and how he writes, but also doesn't feel like I'm reading a script.
Right.
Really
I mean,
good.
I think it's interesting because, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, that film was a hard one for me to watch because, like, I am not at all a fan of Quentin Tarantino as a human being.
Okay.
Like, I think but it's like I think if I think about the film and like Brad Pitt and Leo and what they did in that film and the story, it's like, I enjoyed the story, but it's like, I think it's like Tarantino. It's like, he's a hard sell. I think for a lot of the things that he's said and done, especially for like, I think a lot of his like racism and sexism, like it's a really difficult person to like discuss, but it's like, I can't deny that that's a film that tripped me up. And like, I haven't like stopped thinking about either. Cause it's like the ending alone, I was like, okay, like what just happened? I didn't expect that at all to go down the way it did. But I know that that's like a lot. I mean, like if we're talking about like directors, I mean, that's the same thing you could say for like James Gunn. Like he has a lot of controversy behind him, but it's like, I think that's always been an interesting conversation in entertainment. It's like, because I mean, there's obviously a bunch of people involved in a production and a film and writing, like not just like the directors themselves and like their past.
The difference between like a Gunn and a Tarantino is Gunn's plugged in society-wise. Tarantino is unplugged. Like he's not. You have to pull Quentin aside and be like, Quentin, and he might push back a bit, and then he'll realize, and then go, but then something else that he doesn't realize. Like
I just think he's a mess. Like, but his films, like I can't deny that. Like, I mean, have I watched a lot of his films? Like, absolutely. Like I've watched a lot of his films. But I also think I gotta like say like it's like one of those conversations where it's like his films are things I can talk about. I do enjoy elements of them. They're things that I enjoy watching. Him as a person. I mean, I have this with a lot of things like in entertainment. There's a lot of like films and shows and books and like things that in music even that like I'll listen to and it's like I'm entertained. I can't talk. I'm entertained. I'm entertained by them, but I also like acknowledge that people behind these things have done some dumb shit. So like it's like Tarantino, not a fave, but once upon a time, that story and what it did. And like I'm just a big Brad and Leo fan. So like seeing them come together, I was like, I like this. That's what you needed to tell me is like Brad and Leo are together in this film and it's going to be absolutely wacky. And to see them do what they did in the finale of that film, never thought I'd see something like that. Ever from either of them. Like absolutely never thought it would ever happen. So I don't know. It's an interesting film. I'll say that for sure.
I think one of the things with the book that you could garner an appreciation for, which I was thinking about as I read the book, was everybody talks about Brad Pitt in that movie. Well, he won the Oscar. Cliff Booth's a fun character. He's great. He's great. And you know, Margot Robbie's part of it. But reading the book and getting the Rick Dalton character, getting the inside, the mind.
This is my fave in the film. Like I love Rick Dalton the most.
The brilliant thing is, it's all there with Leo in that movie without the book telling me that. That's how great Leo's performance is. The book will enhance Leo's performance that he already gave. I'm not saying it's helping him. I'm saying you're like, damn, he had that. Like that is like there, like with his performance without these words. Like I don't know if you would know, because I'm curious then, because I'm not familiar, is this something that came out afterwards, or would either of them like had any of this like backstory or insight from Tarantino? Like this was developed no, this was the book was written after. Yeah. Okay. So
no one on set, like in terms of like character development, that is not stuff that they would have like had access to.
Maybe one of them came up with it and gave it to Tarantino. I don't know, but Tarantino's been lollygagging around because got his thing where he's going to make 10 movies and retire, and now we're on number 10, and he's taking his time, which more, you know, it kind of sucks that like he made such a great film that would have been like, felt like the last one to go out on if you're going to do that to yourself. And now he's got one more. It's like,
he can't stop himself.
This would have been, well, his plan, it just happened that film number 9, he wants to make 10 and be done. Film number 9 happened to be this like movie, and it's like, you know, that would have, and it felt like, you know, it was Hollywood end story, you know, but I don't know where he goes next. I'm always interested. But that book will appreciate the Leo performance is one thing that I garnered from the book a lot. But yeah, it's real cool. And if you like old Hollywood stories and stuff, which is what he did in research for the book and the movie, he had conversations with like Burt Reynolds and like all these people from Clint Eastwood and all these people back in the day, and how things happen and things like that. And it's a very interesting book.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yep, that'll do it. Sharareh, this concludes our first session of the World Film Project. I'd say. And thanks to you, those of you who came in for this one and found these movies and watched along. I love you all the best. I love you all the same, though. And we had a lot of fun. Please, your suggestions, recommendations for the next one, or just in general, I welcome them. And I want to humbly kneel and thank Sharareh for hopping on 3 episodes in a row for this adventure. You've classed the place up, and I
try. The underworld brings what it can to the game. So
yes, and you've made this little series a giant win in my eyes. So thank you.
Oh, you're always welcome.
Once again, let people know where they can keep up with you.
You can come and find me in the Twitterverse at Sharareh Drury.
All right. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD. Written work at WhySoBlue.com. There's more for the Brandon Peters Show this week. But until then, always remember to keep the positivity in your online film chatter.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at BrandonPetersShow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at BrandonPetersShow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.